So welcome to this second session of our course on sustainability with the focus and sustainable development with the focus on COVID-19. And our second session is devoted, as you have seen from the readings, on this idea of sustainable development also from a mindset and a consciousness standpoint. So I cannot think of any better presenter for today that my friend, my colleague, my teacher and friend, a dear friend, that is Alfredo Sfera-Yunes. Dr. Alfredo Sfera-Yunes has worked for almost 30 years at the World Bank, reaching the position of a director of the Office of Geneva, and has gone through an interesting trajectory as a Chilean economist, the first one hired with an expertise on environmental studies and environmental economics, a new field. And after that study has really impulsed this work of this institution all over the world by leveraging this development process with more sustainable and more participatory and human-based solutions. He's also a Buddhist monk and an expert on spiritual healing and coming from many traditions. So his perspective is very unique for us for understanding this important topic of today. And I'm very glad because the students actually, Alfredo, have read our recently published book on conscious sustainability leadership, chapter 7 and 8, so they know a little bit what we are talking about, but we really are eager and looking forward to hear more from your wisdom, your insights that you have for today. Please join me to thank Alfredo for being with us and welcome you. The floor is yours, Alfredo.
Thank you very much, Marco. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for this invitation. I love to see you also, Marco, and all your students. The topic today, it's like a geometric figure between sustainable development and mindset, and COVID-19. These are the sort of things that you asked me to reflect upon. And I think these are fundamental themes, not only for the United States, but also for all the countries of the world. But clearly for the United States, as we see in a minute, I just want to tell you that Chile is in a very devastating situation. So when we talk about mindset, when we talk about COVID-19, and then we put on the side sustainability, sustainable development, we together should be able to find a framework that enable us to address them in a holistic fashion and not simply adding one more sentence or one more aspect to it. The way we decide to address this theme will clearly determine the leadership solutions. It will determine the quality and the content of leadership education. It will decide the final decision, which are lives of people. It's the people's lives. It's not just anything that we can reproduce or reestablish. So I am challenging you tonight by saying everything is a function of the road you are willing to travel. If you want to go to the basics, you stay with the basics, nothing wrong. But if you want to accompany me, I can push you a little bit, you know, like a Michael Jordan, push a little bit this to another level that Professor Tavanti and I brought into the book together. The essence of the message, for those who want to sort of quit in 5 minutes because you are bored, is that to prevent pandemics, we need to take care of nature. But to take care of nature, we need to change our mindset. Not every mindset is going to care about nature. I will repeat this because this is all I'm going to talk about. You know, this is the essence of the message. To prevent pandemics is not money, It's not medicine, it's nature. Without nature, we will never be able to prevent and even cure pandemics, as we will see later on. But to take care of nature, we need to have a very unique form of mindset. I want to make a preamble. This conference is not a distractor. I am not distracting you when I talk about sustainable development and environment. This is not just going to a bend. Oh, we're talking about sustainable development when people are dying. This is not esoteric to talk about like mindset, human mind, human consciousness. Is the essence of the crisis the planet is facing today. And you as a younger than I am, because I'm 72, obviously you have a huge challenge because you will have to carry on this planet. I say this because I'm a public persona and I cannot be told in some social media that I'm talking about the environment while people are dying. No, to talk about the environment is at the center of COVID-19. And we are distracted by laboratories, by all these theories that I will not talk about because I'm not interested in any conspiracy theory. It's irrelevant for tonight. So the presentation here is trying to find a new framework that will unify and improve the debate, the academic debate, the TV debate, your own debates, your own way of dealing with this subject matter in other sessions. Let me start saying that we need to go to the kernel first of the causes of this crisis. So I will talk about this crisis a little bit because I am surprised about media and how media is not really zeroing in on the solutions that we'll see tonight. If we don't look at the ultimate cause, the kernel of this, clearly we don't have any way to measure what sort of shift we want in mindset. If our understanding is not clear, so how do we measure where do we move? Which is a shift that is positive? Which is a shift that is negative? Or which is a shift that's appropriate or inappropriate, effective or ineffective? It doesn't matter what you use as an adjective. But we need to go to the kernel of this. And this relationship, has a golden rule, which is the second golden rule. The first one, it said just a few minutes ago, if you want to get rid of pandemics, take care of nature. But if you want to take care of nature, you have to take care of mindset. The second one is that is what I call the golden rule, is that different mindsets means different solutions. This might sound all basic, but please make sure that we understand these relationships. And this is what I will try to do today, the first rule and the second rule, because in essence, this visitor, this virus, V of visitor, requires sound environmental policies. This visitor requires vital solutions that rest on the mutual interaction of human consciousness with nature consciousness. That is the ultimate that we need to learn. And third, the lack of preparation for engaging productively and sustainably today is because we have not been able to structure a way to live in a planet as a collective. Collective meaning human beings, sentient beings, other living beings, and nature. Planetary means that we need to change dramatically the unit of account of the analysis. This goes against the nation state notion, this notion that we have boundaries, we do whatever we want, but this is not the path of the future. And so we need to understand better now what sort of path, institutional, political, economic path, lead us to, a planetary view of these problems. Because this is not the first time, but this is not going to be the last time. So the question is whether the politics, it's okay, whether the institutions are okay, whether the economics is okay, whether economic solutions will resolve the first two. This needs to be resolved. And this has to do with how we resolve it. And the how is the mindset. So today's mindset is individualistic, materialistic, combative, is me, is not ours, is not, like Professor Tavanti says many, many times, is not caring, sharing. It's like, I get my solution. It's like America, we see you every day on television. We are going to resolve our problem. You cannot resolve this problem alone. Chile, how can Chile resolve this alone? We didn't create this virus. We didn't have this virus. It came to us. So COVID-19 is a planetary challenge. It's a planetary pandemic. And this requires a huge change in mindset towards at least two attributes. One is infinite interdependence. If we don't understand that we are interdependent, it will be very difficult really to resolve this. And secondly, we need to have a mindset that is aware of the meaningful interactions that we need to have between humans and nature. So this mindset will force us to move from just human laws, rules, regulation, to natural law, the laws of nature, from human behavior to nature's behavior, from human health to nature's health, and I'll talk about a little bit at one point, because they are not dissociated, they are the same, and as I said before, human consciousness and nature consciousness. The pandemic is the strongest warning that humanity has to radically change its mindset, and by changing the mindset, changing the lifestyle we have on this planet. This is not just a slogan. This is not just a phrase on the air. This is the essence, because human beings depend on the services of nature. We depend on forests, on wetlands, on ecological habitats. This is not anymore a surprise. This is not anymore something that we need to repeat too much. But the health of people and the health of the planet are totally interconnected. And this is COVID. COVID is the demonstration, the clearest demonstration of this connectedness. Because as we'll see in a minute, these are zoonotic diseases, diseases that come from vectors. And these are natural vectors like bats and rats and many other forms of that. So let me go very quickly on the causes of the crisis. The first is that people say on television, we never expected this. Oh, this is a surprise. Even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the famous IPCC, in 2013 had a special chapter on the question of climate change and diseases and how these vectors might get out of control. But this is not the first time that we are discussing this. I've been in international conference, as you may know from my CV, for years. The relation between environment and health, it's very well known. The amount of money that the US spends on environmental medicine are billions and billions of dollars, because the US understands this need to focus on environment and human health. So what we are seeing today is a debate which people are being told that this is new. We know about the SDGs, no? The Sustainable Development Goals. This debate was there. We have been in discussion about biological wars. This debate was there. Be careful, be careful. If a laboratory fails, it's like the discussion on nuclear weapons. So this is not new at all, and we have an ethical and moral responsibility, to put these cards on the table, particularly in academia, because we're not supposed to be politicized. So these zoonotic diseases are very important infectious diseases. In fact, the statistics show that 60% of the infectious diseases are zoonotic. Ebola, MERS, SARS, dengue, And I come down there, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not talking about the nature of these things, but of course we know about Ebola. We know a lot in Chile about dengue, you know, the rats and so on. And the vectors are pets. The vectors are trade of wildlife animals that come with a particular virus that they can contain, but we cannot contain. It has to do with water supplies that are contaminated, food that is contaminated, and also something very important, animal husbandry. You know, when you have this one DNA creature there, like a chicken, all of the same DNA, they are tremendous vector of diseases. And SARS is part of that, you know. Now, if you want to read the literature, you will find that there are some very interesting articles about the most popular zoonotic diseases of the United States. You know, influenza, salmonella, West Nile virus, plagues, rabies, coronaviruses of all types, Lyme disease, and so on and so forth. I will not have time to really go too much in that, but I would like to say that if we look at the background of what is the cause of this disease, in addition to what is being discussed on television, is that we have destroyed the natural habitats, the buffer zones that we have between nature and human beings, and therefore, you know, these viruses find that they don't have the space, you know, to go with these bats that now are not in the forest. The bats are in different storage areas, you know, so they come closer and closer to human beings. That's why this is important. It's not a bend. This is the center of the debate. The more we destroy ecological regions, the more the animals need to come closer and closer and become. Look at what is happening with rats in New York. I used to live in New York. You know, it's you open a trash can and 10 rats come out of it. This is very dangerous. This is not a joke. It's a big thing. Why they're there? Because we are more and more cementing the lands that we have on our farm. So part of the solution, when I get at the end of the presentation, is to talk about these actions, you know, how to change the social distances from ecological buffering distancing, you know. And I just presented to the government, not to the government, but in social media, to the people of Chile, a specific formula in which every house, every apartment, every neighborhood, every city, every region of the country, in your case, every state, has a specific formula to create these buffer zones, you know, and this is the way we will protect ourselves, we will protect our children, and I mean, people are very happy with the positive indicators. Oh, this is great, you know, there are not too many people now in the hospital because of bad polluted air, because the air is better, and they put you big pictures about the world and so on. It's fantastic that wildlife is coming back to the ocean, whales and dolphins. Yeah, it is great. But can we propose social distancing or quarantine as the policy for the future? It's very difficult with, you know, nearly 8 billion people in the planet. You know, so we need to be creative to do this. And what aggravates the problem is pollution, lack access to water. This is very important even in the United States. In the United States, there are 12 million people who do not have access to water and don't have water through pipes. And there are 40 million people that have no water because they cannot pay the bills. So now some of the states are saying, no, don't cut off the water. Now we are in quarantine, we are in an emergency, let's do that. But the UN says that 2/3, is in between 2 and 3 billion people in the planet will face water shortage. And if the hygiene solution is to wash your hand and be clean, this is impossible. And if you add that people don't have income to buy soap, You know, this is really a time bomb. Bad nutrition, consumption of chemicals like pesticides, fertilizer, human encroachment, the destruction of biodiversity, and so on. But before I enter into the mindset proper, I want to dig a little bit more on this. And I wrote something about whose pharmacology. That was the title of what I wrote. Medicine is naked. Modern medicine is absolutely naked today. Modern medicine is a pharmacological medicine, vaccines or, you know, pharmaco. And what happened is that this virus came, no vaccine, no pharmaco, nothing. So it depends on our immune system. So if we are going to look at the future, we need to understand a new form of medicine. The medicine of immune system, which means that medicine and health in the country cannot be just managing diseases. We need to manage health. And when we talk about managing health, we're talking about a different point of departure. We're talking about food, nutrition, and all sorts of strategies to do that. I'm not against vaccines. I'm not against pharmaco. No, this is not my point. My point is that now is the test for the immunity system of human beings, sentient beings, and nature. And I want to tell you something, that the immune systems of nature and ours are interconnected. So if we weaken nature, our immune system weakens. You know, 60% or 80% of the most important pharmacos that are sold in drugstores of the United States, particularly for cancer, they are all based on natural elements. So if we destroy nature, we are destroying also the pharmacochemical industry, because we cannot live out of laboratory, because living out of laboratory is living without life. You know, life doesn't come from laboratories. It comes from medicinal herbs, from bark of trees, from bushes, and from flowers, and so on and so forth. So I just presented a paper to the magazine Tricycle, you know. I don't know if they will accept it, about the grand law of healing. And the grand law of healing says that if you want to heal yourself, you have to heal nature. And if you want to heal nature, you have to heal yourself. You know, and I cannot develop this here, but what I'm trying to impress upon you is that if we do not really think about a way to find better and a stronger immunity system, not only in humans, but also in animals, these viruses will kill us in no time. There are great lessons about this, but I don't have time to talk too much about it. But lessons about climate change, population density, about how to deal with human rights at this point in time, and so on and so forth, you know. What I want to go now is to talk about sustainable development. I can keep talking about coronavirus, Marco, all night long, because I am in the public debate here now and in other countries, but I want to go to sustainable development, which is the second corner. In the second corner, you know, I told you that different mindset, the second rule was that different mindset means different decisions, different understanding, different ways of conceiving reality. And here I will not talk about the definition of sustainable development that you must know. The most popular one is that from Dr. Brundtland, that it says that, you know, a society is sustainable when present generations can satisfy their needs without sacrificing the needs of future generations. But what I want to talk about here is that there are other dimensions that are critical if we're going to define mindset. You know, we cannot define mindset outside reality if we are the observers of how mindset needs to shift. So if I want to know how the mindset of my grandchild is to shift, and I'm the observer, I need to know what reality he's surrounded with and see how he faces that reality. And here I have, you know, 6 notions, 6 dimensions of sustainable development that we presented in our book with Dr. Tavanti. One is to think about sustainable development as a stage of economic development. It's one more stage of economic development. So the first one is growth. The second one is socio-economic development. And the third one is sustainable development. The first one is how fast the cake grows. The second one is who eats the cake. And sustainable development is how long the cake will last. You know? So if we adopt that definition of sustainable development and we measure changes in mindset in relationship to that concept, then we have one way of addressing mindset. The second way is to say sustainable development is a collection of values, particularly collective values: solidarity, justice, equity, cooperation, you know, interdependence, interconnectedness. If you think about sustainable development as a reflection of values, then we talk about a very different mindset. A mindset driven by values. Which values? Well, then we can discuss all night. What values are your values, my values, American values, Chilean values, Western values, Eastern values? I have a lot in myself, Eastern values, because of my path as a Buddhist. But values is another way to look at sustainable development. A third way is to look at sustainable development as a bundle of rights.
We don't see you, Alfredo.
I don't know why.
Very good. Yes.
Okay. The third way we can see sustainable development as a bundle of rights. That is to say, rights over nature, natural resources, but also nature's right, the rights that nature has intrinsically because the way nature is in its own self, in its own rights, to be redundant, you know? And so if we are going to talk about mindsets and how we should change mindset, and this is the measure, this concept of sustainable development as a bundle of rights is the measure, is the point of reference, then again, we are talking about a different way of saying, yes, we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction of the mindset. This is very important for education. The fourth one is a style of life. Then we have the fifth one is power structure, but I want to go to the sixth one, which is to think about sustainable development as a state of consciousness. Why do I say a state of consciousness? Because if we look at the values, you know, if you take the first or second one, which is sustainable development as a collection of values, you know, as dominated by values, values are not words. You know, to say, for example, equity, justice, justice is not a word. Justice is a state of mind. It's a state of the soul. That's why Dr. Tavanti and others have said, well, we need to move from having, you know, from knowing to being. Why they are saying that? Because you need to self-realize those values. The values that indigenous peoples have in Chile, the Mapuche Indians, are very different than the values of us, the migrants. I am a third generation of a Lebanese family. They think about nature in a very different way. They think about how to address land in a very different way. So it is very fascinating that people talk about values but don't go the next step. Values are only understood as long as they are self-realized. Otherwise, let's not talk about values. You know, what do we mean by justice? We can spend all night long, but if you have self-realized justice, you can express it in a way that is different from the one who is just advocating justice. Yeah, I understand that we need to advocate values, but values are not only for advocacy purposes, they are for self-realization. You know, so you need to walk the path of justice, not just talk about justice, you know, not talk about compassion. You have to be compassionate, you know, if you want to talk about compassion. So it's important to understand, as I go now into mindset, you know, it's very important that we actually set this point of reference. Just to say that we want a mindset that contains sustainability, that is related to sustainable development, is not enough. And that is the quality, this is not advertising, of the book that Professor Tavanti and I wrote, because we're saying, before you say that, you tell me what type of sustainable development you're talking about. If you don't declare that, then how do you know that the mindset is the right mindset? How do you know how to define a curriculum, an education curriculum for the university, if you are not disclosing what do you mean by sustainable development? And that's why these 6 ways of 6 dimensions, 6 attributes are very important for us to talk about. So if you don't reveal to me which of the 6 you are into, then we don't know if we are talking about the same thing. You know, so if I talk to a Chicago boy from the School of Economics, he's on the first type. He wants growth. He wants employment. This is like what is happening in the US. Open the economy soon because, you know, human life are not that important. We need now to go from the economic side. But other people will say, no, this is not my view. So unless you develop, you tell me the characteristic of sustainable development, I cannot advocate any characteristics of mindsets. This is essential. And this is where Dr. Tavanti and I are, I believe, close to the frontier of the debate. Because, you know, to put these words together in a Russian salad, you know, it's nice, but, you know, and as I will look a little bit in a couple of minutes, you will see how important this is. So I will repeat it. Unless you tell me what is the kernel, the key characteristic of sustainable development for you, mine I reveal it. I say it's conscious development. You will not be able to tell me what the true, real, and important characteristic of a mindset is. You can throw me values, you can throw me words, you can throw me whatever you want, but unless you make that explicit, there is no way we can define a curriculum. There is no way we can debate about this problem. So for me, the future rests on sustainable development, but rests on sustainable development as a state of consciousness. And this is very important because the essence of the position that I'm presenting for you tonight is that different states of awareness, of consciousness, different state of realization will let the mind to focus on different attributes of sustainability. This is the core. For example, if I have a child who decides to play soccer inside my apartment and he bounced the ball against my window, probably he doesn't have the consciousness that he's going to break the window. So when he grows up and I tell him, you remember you were a child, you know, you came here and broke my windows, he will be ashamed because his consciousness changed. Now he knows that you cannot bounce the ball against that glass window. So different state of awareness will let the mind to focus on different attributes of sustainability. So if you want people in the university to focus on the attribute of growth, okay, build a curriculum, build that mindset. I want a curriculum that goes into consciousness, human consciousness. So the attributes of sustainability are the essence here. That's why in the book, we say that nature is a live being, is a live entity, is not a material thing. That comes from consciousness. I cannot explain to you if you don't have that realization. You know, but to me, everything in nature is live, alive. So what's the point? The point is that if the planet is a collection of material things like the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth approach to sustainable development, because all of them, you know, are pointing at nature as a thing, as a collection of material balances that we need to conserve via market first, via value second, via right third, and so on and so forth. Then the only thing you need is to think about mindset as more information. And this is where we are in the debate, Marco. You know, because many of the academics are saying, let's give the student more information, more different courses, so they get some more into their mind. This will never happen. This will never happen, because what we are doing with the student is to increase their mental metabolism to process more information, but we are not ensuring how the synthesis, with what character this synthesis will take place. You know, so someone will say, oh, there are only a few hectares left of forest. And our students will say, there is a few life left in these areas. There's no more life. There are two answers, different answers for the same physical phenomenon. One will say, I cannot produce more furniture, approach 1. And approach 6 will say, wow, this is terrible. Life is being shrunk. And if life shrinks, then I have a serious problem. There is no doubt that a better informed person, that is to say, who have more courses of different variety, is better than less informed. It's better to make decisions more informed than less informed. But to have information per se does not ensure that that mindset will lead to the right solution. This is the problem that I see on television, in CNN, in Fox News. They don't have the synthesis. You know, they pile information. And what happens when you pile information with no conscious synthesis? Fear. People are in fear. More death, more of this, more of that, and so on. So this is the moment to bring, you know, leadership into consciousness, into leadership, and not just more information. So the path of attainment of new forms of mindset, it has nothing to do with more information. It has to do in how your consciousness processes that information. I can say to you, I love you, and you can say, oh, this old man, you know, why he tells me he loves me, he's fresh, you know? But I might say to you, I love you, and you say, oh, he loves me. That's great. Two minds, two levels of consciousness about love, two ways to process the same information. So the big challenge is how we measure the shift. If the shift in mindset will come from variables outside us, external variables, or if the shift in mindset will happen also from shift inside you. And here, there are many layers of mindset. If you put consciousness into the debate, then we cannot have one mindset. You know, my grandson has one mindset. I have another layer of mindset. You know, there are layers of mindset. There's no one mindset. It's not like as if education will create one mindset. Oh, here we have this global being. Nice phrase. One mindset. This is impossible. There will be as many global beings as citizens are in this planet, you know? So there are layers. But the beauty in what I have attain in my personal life is that the core into the ultimate layer, the big layer, the most supernatural layer already exists in ourselves. This is something you have to take just by the letter, because it's something that if you have not realized that, then it will not make much sense. Instead of looking outside, instead of searching all the time for a better life, for a happier life, for a better mindset, I want to tell you tonight that you have it, but the mirror is not clean. So education needs to be that wiper, that is going to clean that mirror, so you attain your maximum expression of inner consciousness. And that maximum expression of inner consciousness is the consciousness of the mindset Mr. Tavanti and I are looking for, and is the core of that book. So we are going from goal to values, from values to consciousness, from knowledge to wisdom, from outer to inner, from market laws to spiritual laws, from awareness to consciousness, from just remembering to self-realization, and so on and so forth. But the essence today, to make it simplest as possible, is that we have to move today, because of the coronavirus, from a mindset of simply who am I, or who I am, to a mindset of who we are. And just that, forget about anything I have said. Forget about everything I've said tonight. If we are able to understand how we move, from the mindset of who I am to the mindset of who we are, we just won the battle. So let me finish by saying that I have been proposing several, I will skip many stuff that I have here about ethics and so on and so forth, but I just want to outline quickly, I end in no more than 2 minutes, some actions that are coherent, that are in sync with what I have proposed to you tonight. One is that COVID-19 is an incredible, unique, historic call for solidarity. If we don't understand that, we're finished. I want to be in solidarity with you, even if I am 18,000 kilometers from you. But if we are not willing to be in solidarity, then we are finished. Second, the only paradigm that is going to be able to help us in this situation is the paradigm of mutual care. So I'm advocating care economics, I'm advocating other stuff, but if we do not understand, in Chile, I talk about Chile, not the US, so I don't get in trouble, but I live in the US for 34 years, so I know more or less that beautiful country very well. The point is that the paradigm of mutual care, it means not only that I have to be saved, no, I need to save the poor, I need to save the hungry, I need to save those people who have nothing. So I'm contacting organizations in my country and trying to be generous with them and say, look, I cannot get out of my apartment. I've been in quarantine. This is my 10th week in quarantine. But this means that you have Zoom and WhatsApp and whatever, you can get that paradigm into place. I am advocating social distancing as a transitory measure until we get ecological buffer distancing. We need to create great buffers so the virus get entertained by flowers, by trees, by other animals, and not with human beings. And also that will strengthen our immunity system. I'm talking about a natural solution that for many people might be esoteric, out of sight, but let me tell you, my friend, particularly you who are young, if you don't listen to this message, you will be in deep trouble. Technology will not do it. Help, yes, but will not resolve the problem of this imbalance we have on this planet. Rebuilding planetary health. This is the most intelligent investment you can do in the United States. Moratorium on natural forests. Don't touch them anymore. Moratorium on polluting water. To have a national program, I'm advocating in Chile, to clean all the bodies of water of Chile. To clean the Pacific Ocean. Let's do it together. You are in the north, we are in the south. I'm talking about collective solutions and collective responsibilities. And finally, from a political point of view, because politics cannot be avoided, we are in the political world, I am saying, and we said this in the book, that we are living today a very different governance structure. It's not just government, pyramidal structure. We live in what I am saying today, ciudadanismo in Spanish, which means citizensness. We are living in a structure where the citizens are the essence. We are going to stop this. In Chile, people don't want to stop it. People are not following the guideline, so we are in a mess. We are really in a big mess. But if we want to stop it, we can stop it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. It's very insightful, very inspiring words, as we always hear from you. So we're very grateful for this. There are some questions from the floor, from the students that I would invite them, actually, instead of me repeating the question, to invite you to unmute yourself and just ask this question directly to Dr. Alfredo Sfera-Yunis, that is here with us for a few more minutes. Let me ask, maybe starting from the last one, Mirna, you have an observation, it just came out. Would you pose your questions or observation to him?
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for your conversation. It was really great and very passionate, and it's great to see that you're very knowledgeable about this as well. My comment or question, I guess, was based on the comment that you made about hoping that our educational system kind of focuses more on a shift in consciousness and mindset rather than just providing more information. And I love that idea, but in reality, that's not always what happens. So how can we take it upon ourselves, or do you have any suggestions or tips on how we can control that shift and maybe take action when we have all of these other factors, such as the media and other individuals around us, and even the educational system, if we are in school, not really having that goal in mind?
Beautiful question. Thank you very much. I will give you 2 or 3 terms for you to ferment for a little while. One is self-governance. If you don't govern yourself, then whatever the universities can do, whatever information they can give you, even if you get A+, you are not going to grow. You're not going to grow because you don't have self-governance, because you don't know what is right or wrong. You don't know what is sufficient or insufficient. You don't know what really drives you. But that is the obligation of the university, but not only the university, it's your obligation. The university cannot give you everything. It's impossible. But it's true what you say, that we need a system of education that is transformational in its core self. I just finished 2 courses, because even if I'm 72, I'm still studying. And I'm amazed by the answers of students or the reactions of professors, because in these online courses, everything is there. You see the exams of everyone and you say, oh my God, how come this topic stays here? Why don't we go a little bit further? Why don't we deepen it on it? So if we take the approach of the book that we just put out, and we say, these are the laws, changes in mindset means changes in understanding, changes in decision-making. But the question is, what changes my understanding? Your consciousness, your capacity to store, process, based on your experience, based on many things. Now, I have an Eastern philosophy, but I also was educated Catholic and Christian, and both have instrument to expand your mind. In other words, the word self-governance has to be accompanied by a second word, which is you have to have the ability to transcend immediate reality. This is not a pen. This is an instrument of my attention. That is a big change. Huh? You know, this is a pen. Yeah, but what do I know? This is an instrument of my mindfulness. Because when I put the pen down to write your question, I zero in on that question. This is mandatory because you're not only a medical doctor, you're a human being. You're not only a business manager, you're a human being. You're not only a president of your country, you're a human being. And therefore, how can you assess the quality of your decisions? The only way is with your consciousness. So if your consciousness is the size of a being, then that is the size of your decision. But if your consciousness is the size of the Empire State, that is the quality of your decision. That is what education in Greek is all about. The flowering of the inner self is not the repeating, like the thing that Marco, that I hate in this course, is the multiple choice questions. They drive me crazy because they put me the sentence and I'm in a different plane. I say, well, this could be true too. Everything could be true. You know what I mean? So then I go to the textbook, the professor said this. So I put what the professor said, which is his consciousness, not mine, and I win. So I get 100 all the time. But this is not education. This is just answering the multiple choice question.
There is another question. So I'm just going here and there. Of course, there is. We'll try to cover all of them. Sarah Draffin is posing a questions about the style of life. Sarah, could you please share the question?
Yeah, absolutely. So just pulling together what you shared today in the reading, and thank you so much, Alfredo, for being here. That was a great session. But I guess one thing I had a question about is, I guess, knowing that capitalism is a big part of American culture and how people kind of associate with us and our success in some ways and our downfalls in a lot of others. I guess one of the largest hurdles that I saw would be changing that style of life in that respect. And I know that you shared today that there's so many different mindsets. People can take the same information in and have a very different perspective on it. So I guess since there's such a large paradigm shift that would need to happen there, what advice would you have for us trying to help to move that forward?
Look, the Buddha used to say that people learn more from the negative than from the positive. So I will be a Buddhist in answering the question. This style of life of the United States, it's impossible to be embraced by every country of the world. I'm not saying you should not have it, don't take me wrong, but it's impossible that all countries have a per capita income of minimum $38,000. This is not possible. There is no natural resources that are going to be able to do it. The United States consumes like 5 planet Earth. Chile, listen to this, Chile is almost 2 planet Earth. We have this style of life of consumption now, you know. We are consuming twice as much what belongs to us. An economy based on fossil fuels, it's not possible any longer. because of ozone layer depletion, because of climate change. It is not possible to destroy our biodiversity because we are going to have COVID-20, COVID-21, COVID-22, and your lifestyle is going to be ruined because in the final hour of the day, I don't care how much I have. I care about my life now. You know what I mean? If people take my house, take it. You know, COVID-19 opened our eyes of what is relevant. And this relevancy is what will change the style of life, which has to go with changes in values, changes in understanding, changes in consciousness. But we cannot have a little girl, 14-year-old, claiming climate change, you know, Greta Thunberg alone, and we, the stupid of us, go on the street because Greta tells us, no, we have to do it. We just cannot go and say, sorry, no more agreement, no more Kyoto agreement, no more Paris agreement. We are going to deal ourselves because we want Pennsylvania to go back to claim more coal. To go back to the coal economy with 8 billion people in the planet is not the same as going back to a coal economy with 1 billion people in the planet.
Sure, yeah.
8 billion people in the planet means at least 4 billion cars. So we are not talking about the same. I have seen the population of the earth to change, to double at least once in my lifetime.
We have a couple of more questions. Actually, I would like to ask both Maura and Amelia to ask their questions together if possible, so that Alfredo will be able to answer both of them. Maura?
Yeah, I was wondering, as we're able to take action, where do you see being one of the more impactful places that we can work right now, or where would you suggest that we focus efforts?
And Amelia?
Marco, are you referring to my question about, well, my kind of response question to Brittany about natural selection versus life shrinking?
Yes, yes.
It was just a kind of a question response to Brittany asking about like natural selection versus life shrinking, like you're discussing, how the plant, like the forests are shrinking, and I was saying, is the difference between allowing nature to run its, is the difference of, like, between nature running its course and kind of how life shifts and adjusts and evolves versus human interaction with nature and how we have forcibly shrunk certain things, and how can we make sure we, like, how can we walk that line, basically?
Sorry, yeah, the question was actually from Brittany. Brittany, you want anything to add to that question?
No, I think Amelia did pretty good. Yeah, I was just curious about like what the threshold is for like what's acceptable for this like life shrinking term when it comes to natural selection versus like human impact too, because that's just like a thought that keep coming to mind as you talk about even the pandemic.
Thank you.
Me?
Yes, Alfredo.
Okay,
so there, this kind of pre-condensed questions.
I'll do very short, but these are big questions, Marco. These are big questions, natural selection. Look, I give you just one example. How do we deal with nuclear power? If we let nature to deal with nuclear power, probably natural selection will be different. But when human beings intervene, you know, and we decide to have power plants, you know, all over and so on, the fact that a power plant explode is not natural selection. You know, natural selection is natural selection. That is to say, let natural law decide how many people are in the planet. But today, this is very difficult to decide. I don't know where the line is drawn. But what I know is that scientific evidence shows that we passed the line. For 8 billion people in the planet, we cannot destroy the Amazon forest. Will we? Should we? Should we not? I say no. Now, in the United Nations, there is a very important principle. is called the precautionary principle. To be precautious. That is to say, you do not need all the scientific evidence to make a decision. If Amelia tomorrow is a mother, maybe she's a mother now, but assuming that she's not a mother now and you are a mother in the future, and you give to your little child, you know, a pumpkin soup, and he goes into diarrhea, you're not going to wait for the scientific evidence to stop giving him or her, you know, pumpkin soup. You know, so let's not dissociate your common sense from what appears to be a very scientific question. I'm really worried about natural selection. For God's sake, you know, COVID-19 is not the way to deal with natural selection, you know. Sorry, I think COVID-19 is a result of human intervention. This is the same debate we had in the beginning of the 70s about global warming. I almost lost my job when I said there is global warming. I was told, this is nature, forget it, don't create things. Yeah, but then when Al Gore said it a few years later, I invited him. I invited Al Gore to give for the first time his presentation in the National Academy of Science of Washington. It was the first time he presented these slides about climate and world, and he was beginning his research. This debate is endless. I call for common sense. And last but not least, what can you do now, which is the first question, you know, start with yourself. Start with your neighborhood. Get the people in the neighborhood and say, okay, how many trees we have? How many square meters of green we have? Let's convert the roof of our building into a green roof and capture, you know, carbon. You know, let's say that we will adopt this index of buffer, you know, so we will put all our money in the park we have very close. The US is very privileged. The US has incredible parks, urban parks and national parks. You know, don't cut any more sequoias. You know, be tough on this. So you have a lot to do. But tonight, for me, please be generous with the poorest of the poor in the United States. There are millions of people who are suffering from COVID-19 with no water, no sanitary facilities, no money for soap, no money for food. So if you want to do something, you know, give $50. I can burn in a night with you, any of you, with Marco, $100 in a restaurant. Why don't you avoid going to a bar one Friday and say, okay, one Friday, one of my Friday a month are for some organization that you choose you want to cooperate. But to keep like, I don't have COVID, therefore everyone is fine, that's not the policy. If you want to be even more interested, talk to Marco and say, Marco, put me in touch with the tree planting organization, you know, in South America, and let's plant 1 million trees. Let's plant 1 tree per inhabitant of the United States. Thank you.
Alfredo, Sphere Unis, thank you so much for being with us. I know that you have stimulated very much our interest and in going deeper into those subjects. And thank you for challenging us to go deeper into this consciousness element and understanding of our interdependence with nature. Some of the students probably want to be in contact with you. We'll have probably additional questions with your permission, maybe they can go even to me or directly to you so that they can ask additional questions if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for being with us. Please be healthy, be good, be productive, be mindful as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you, and for you, Mark, thank you very much. A big hug, say hello to family. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Nada.